Hey, yo, Teofimo Lopez, it looks like he could be fighting Steve Claggett. Dag nabbit. Steve Claggett has a record of 38, 7 losses, and 2 draws with 26 KOs, 34 years of age. This seems to be out of left field, but if you know what I know, it's really not, and I'll explain. Make sure you stay tuned to the end of this video. So it looks like Teofimo versus Steve Claggett. They are finalizing a deal. June 29th is the earmarked date in Miami. As you guys know, Teofimo Lopez is the WBO junior welterweight title holder. And this fight would, of course, take place at 140 pounds. Now, this fight, it stinks. This fight stinks. It smells rancid, repugnant. Don't like it. But again, I'm not even going to make this video long because I don't even really have good things to say about this fight. Make sure you guys subscribe. My name is Ego. I've been covering boxing over 10 years. Best in the business, and it's not even close. Now, I don't like the fight. Teofimo is a champion, and this is not really a type of fight. And off the heels of his last fight, so let's get into it. That's why I believe that Top Rank would make a fight like this, because the world knows that Teofimo lost his last fight and or at the very least did not look great in that fight. So they have to save face and put him in there and get that aftertaste out of people's mouth from Teofimo's last performances. Now, I gotta admit this, and I gotta say this, because I would be remiss if I didn't mention this in this video. The thing that's almost horrible with boxing is people try to play boxing fans for fools. For example, there'll be fighter A ducking fighter B, and fighter A will tell you that fighter B doesn't make sense. Fighter B is a nobody. Fighter B can't sell tickets. Fighter B is not a threat. So the whole world wants to see fighter A fight fighter B, but in world boxing, you always see the fighter A, and usually the A-side fighter, making excuses as to why they really don't need to justify fighting. But then fighter A will fight fighters C, D, E, and F, and those fighters are substantially worse than fighter B. So again, boxers and boxing trying to play people for fools, because if fighter B was so terrible, why are you fighting anybody that's lesser than fighter B? But you had a million reasons why fighter B and that fight didn't make sense. Same thing here, right? You got a guy like Teofimo and his dad, and they're brash, they're outspoken. Cool. I don't have a problem with showmen. I don't have a problem with being outspoken. But in boxing, you got to back it up. But here's the thing. They're calling out fights with guys like Terrence Crawford and saying we want Devin Haney and things like that. But then you're fighting Steve Claggett, right? Crawford's last fight was Errol Spence, top guy in the division. They were the top 2. And now Crawford is the top dog because he beat him, right? Devin Haney is fighting Ryan Garcia, who got a win in the win column, and he has a style that could give Devin Haney problems if Devin is not on his job, on his P's and Q's. So Devin's first fight was Regis Prograis. So Devin is challenging himself to go from Lomachenko to fighting a champion for the WBC belt in Regis Prograis, who was a champion with power, and then now fighting Ryan Garcia. And then Teofimo has been in this division longer than Devin Haney, and his first fight was Pedro Campo. Devin Haney's first fight, again, was a champion, Regis Prograis. So it's funny that Teofimo and team and his dad, they're calling for the greater fights and the bigger fights, saying we want Crawford, but then you're fighting Steve Claggett, which is the opposite direction of a Terrence Crawford, which lets me know that you don't want to fight Terrence Crawford, because you would fight someone closer to Crawford's level, or at least somebody that would prepare you for potentially moving up and fighting Terrence Crawford. So that's how I see it. But again, it's funny because boxing will try to lead you astray and bamboozle you, and boxing will try to convince you that, oh, I won my last fight. Like Teofimo, he's claiming he won versus Jermaine Ortiz, but the fact that you're taking a step back and fighting an unknown, unregarded fighter with 7 losses shows me you're not as confident, and your team is not as confident, or whoever is authorizing this is not as confident as you made it out to be, which is why they're giving you a fight that you can look better in. Of course, a guy who comes forward, who has already been beaten 7 times. Yeah, Teofimo has power. Teofimo is athletic. So yeah, Teofimo, his style should fare well with a guy like that. Plus, this guy has previously been stopped before. So the fact that he's been stopped in 2011 by an unknown 10-4-1 Romeo Jackal Salam, it shows that he can be beat because he has 7 losses, and it shows that he can be stopped. So nothing Teofimo said about the Jermaine Ortiz fight becomes believable, because again, just hear me out. If you truly feel that you whooped Jermaine Ortiz, which is what you're saying, and he ran and you look good in the fight, then why would you take a backward step? Why would you take such an obvious tune-up style fight, right? Because your confidence shouldn't be shattered. Your confidence should be at its peak if what you are saying is really true. Like if you really believe that you whooped Jermaine Ortiz and looked good in that fight, and he ran and you got the best of him and all that, then there's no reason for a tune-up. Because if you know you got jobbed, you know you got robbed, you got jerked or whatever, your confidence would be pretty much at an all-time high. There would be no reason for your confidence to waver. So the fact that Top Rank sees fit for a tune-up lets me know what I need to know. Same thing they did with Jared Anderson. Jared Anderson had a tough fight with Charles Martin, and Top Rank brought him back really quick. And then he fought a guy who was coming off a knockout loss, and then he knocked that guy out. So that's what old Top Rank trick. What they'll do is, if you have a bad performance or a loss, sometimes Top Rank will bring you right back in the mix, and they'll give you, for all intents and purposes, a really tune-up fight. A guy that, like, if you just look bad, a guy made you look bad in your fight, and you had to chase him, he was boxing well, and he was using some movement, then they're going to give you the complete polar opposite, a defenseless guy who's not as capable, who's not going to move, who stylistically is not your kryptonite, that you should fare well with and do very well with, and they're going to give you that fight to look good. And then hopefully that erases from the public eye the embarrassing stain from your previous fight. Oldest trick in the book. Take my word for it. You can see it. I can think of several examples. Like even Pacquiao. When Top Rank had Pacquiao. He got blasted by Juan Manuel Marquez. And instead of doing like part 5 or fighting like a Ruslan Provodnikov, someone who coming off of a knockout loss has the power to hurt you, they put him in with Brandon Rios, in Macau, Brandon Rios has no defense, and Pacquiao, with his athletic ability, if he was still Pacquiao, and still he was always going to be faster than Rios and better footwork. So again, Pacquiao should fare well with that style. Now, that's a bit more extreme, just given the fact that if a guy got knocked out, like Pacquiao got knocked the heck out, right, then that at least makes a little bit more sense. It makes more sense in general because you're coming off of a loss. But Teofimo's not coming off of a loss. He's coming off of a robbery win, and he's claiming that he looked good in the fight and certainly won the fight. But him fighting Steve Claggett shows me otherwise.